Imagine discovering the cure for one of the deadliest diseases in history, and watching another man receive all the glory while you die forgotten. This is the true story of a brilliant doctor who saved millions of lives, but had his name erased from history books. A revolutionary discovery. A scientific betrayal. And a secret that changed the world forever. We are in the year 1882, in the port city of Alexandria, Egypt. The heat is suffocating. In the narrow, dusty streets, something deadly is spreading. People healthy in the morning wake up with violent fever the next day. Their bodies shake uncontrollably. The skin turns yellow. The eyes lose their brightness. Within 48 hours, many are already dead. Families weep, but cannot even touch the bodies. The fear is as great as the disease. No one knows what is causing it. No one knows how to stop it. Local doctors are desperate, powerless before the relentless advance of death. It is in this nightmare scenario that a young Russian doctor arrives, just 24 years old. His name is Waldemar Khavkin. He doesn't know it yet, but he is about to change the history of medicine forever. And he is also about to have his greatest achievement stolen right before his eyes. Khavkin was not an ordinary man. Born into a Jewish family in Ukraine, he grew up facing constant discrimination. Russian universities had severe quotas against Jews. Even though he was brilliant, he had to fight 3 times harder than his peers to study medicine. But that struggle forged in him an unshakable determination. When he graduated, Khavkin didn't just want to be a doctor. He wanted to find answers to the great mysteries that killed millions. And the greatest mystery of his era had a name: cholera. Cholera was the absolute terror of the 19th century. A bacterial disease that spreads through contaminated water, causing diarrhea so severe it dehydrates and kills a person within hours. Entire cities were devastated. Families disappeared overnight. Between 1817 and 1923, cholera killed more than 40 million people worldwide. 40 million. To put it in perspective, that's more than the entire population of California, Texas, and Florida combined, simply wiped from existence. And no one could stop it. When Khavkin arrived in Egypt, the epidemic was at its peak. He saw children dying in their mothers' arms. He saw strong men become corpses in a matter of hours. He saw the absolute despair in the eyes of those who knew they could be next. But where others saw only death, Khavkin saw a scientific opportunity. He knew the answer lay in bacteria. The problem was how to train the human body to fight them before it was too late. Khavkin began working tirelessly. 16 hours a day in the makeshift laboratory. Cultivating the cholera bacteria. Testing different methods of weakening it. Studying how the immune system reacted. He was trying to create something that had never been done before: a vaccine against cholera. Not a cure, but a prevention. A way to teach the body to defend itself before even being attacked. It was revolutionary. It was dangerous. And it was about to work. After months of attempts, Khavkin finally developed a method. He took the live cholera bacteria and weakened it through controlled heat and chemical exposure. The bacteria became too weak to cause the full disease, but strong enough to trigger an immune response. It was ingenious. It was risky. And it needed to be tested on a human being. And that's when Khavkin made the most courageous and controversial decision of his life. He didn't wait for approvals. He didn't form ethics committees. He didn't ask for volunteers. In July 1892, alone in his laboratory, Waldemar Khavkin prepared a syringe with his experimental vaccine and injected it into his own arm. Imagine that moment. A young man, alone, knowing that the liquid entering his veins could kill him within hours. He told no one. He left no farewell letters. He simply injected the vaccine and waited. In the first hours, he felt fever, chills, nausea. All the initial symptoms of cholera began to appear. Had he made a fatal mistake? Was the bacteria not sufficiently weakened? Khavkin noted every symptom, every reaction, even believing he might be writing his last words. But then, something extraordinary happened. After 48 hours, the symptoms began to diminish. His body was winning. The vaccine was working. He had survived. And more than that, he had created immunity. In the following months, Khavkin tested the vaccine on more volunteers. All developed immunity. None died. The news spread quickly. For the first time in history, there was real hope against cholera. The young Russian doctor had done the impossible. But his struggle was only beginning, because now he would face something far worse than any disease: the greed and politics of European science. Khavkin took his discovery to Russia, hoping for recognition and support. But he found contempt. He presented his results to the Imperial Academy of Medicine. The Russian doctors laughed at him. A Ukrainian Jew saying he solved the cholera problem? Impossible. They refused to recognize his work. They called his methods irresponsible. They said he was a dangerous charlatan. It didn't matter that he had data. It didn't matter that he had survivors. It didn't matter that he had tested it on himself. To them, Khavkin was undesirable. And undesirables don't make revolutionary discoveries. Destroyed but not defeated, Khavkin fled to France. In Paris, he was welcomed by the legendary Louis Pasteur, the father of modern microbiology. Pasteur saw the genius that Russia had despised. He gave Khavkin a laboratory, resources, respect. And it was there, working at the Pasteur Institute, that Khavkin perfected his vaccine and began producing it on a large scale. In 1893, a massive cholera epidemic exploded in India. Tens of thousands were dying. The British government, which controlled India at the time, was desperate. It was then that they heard about the Russian doctor with a miraculous vaccine. They invited Khavkin to Mumbai, giving him total freedom to implement his vaccination program. Khavkin arrived in India and found an apocalyptic scenario. Entire villages decimated. Rivers of corpses. But he didn't hesitate. He set up vaccination centers. He trained local teams. And he began vaccinating thousands of people per day. The results were spectacular. In vaccinated communities, the mortality rate dropped 90%. 90%. Khavkin was literally saving thousands of lives per week. He became a hero in India. They built laboratories in his name. The British government honored him. It seemed he would finally get the recognition he deserved. But then came the betrayal. In Europe, other scientists began to pay attention. Especially a German bacteriologist named Waldemar Khavkin. Wait, you must be thinking. Waldemar Khavkin. But wasn't the Russian doctor's name Waldemar Khavkin? Exactly. And here is the most audacious theft in the history of medicine. Waldemar Mordecai Wolf Khavkin was actually Waldemar Khavkin himself. But not exactly. Let me explain this disturbing twist. While Khavkin was saving lives in India, European scientists began republishing his work under anglicized versions of his name. Scientific articles that should have credited Waldemar Khavkin began appearing crediting Waldemar Khavkin. British newspapers spoke of the German Dr. Khavkin and his revolutionary discovery. Even Khavkin himself, trying to be accepted in Western scientific society, began using the name Waldemar instead of his birth name. He changed his own name to try to escape the anti-Semitism and discrimination that haunted him. But the appropriation went further. Other European scientists began publishing variations of his vaccine, claiming improvements and innovations. Khavkin's method was dissected, slightly modified, and republished under new names. Pharmaceutical laboratories began producing commercial versions of the vaccine without paying royalties or giving proper credit. The discovery that Khavkin made by injecting poison into his own veins was now enriching others. And then came the devastating blow. In 1902, a tragedy occurred in Punjab, India. 19 people died after receiving a plague vaccine that Khavkin had developed. The investigation revealed that the batch was contaminated, not through Khavkin's fault, but through the negligence of a laboratory assistant who didn't follow sterilization protocols. But that didn't matter. The European press attacked Khavkin ferociously. They called him a murderer. They demanded his arrest. They destroyed his reputation. The same man who had saved hundreds of thousands of lives was now blamed for 19 deaths that were not his fault. Khavkin was removed from his laboratory. His license was suspended. He was investigated, publicly humiliated, and finally exonerated 2 years later when the truth came out. But the damage was done. His career was destroyed. His name was tarnished. And while he struggled to clear his reputation, other scientists continued profiting from his discoveries. Khavkin spent his final years in relative obscurity, working in a small laboratory in Lausanne, Switzerland. He died in 1930, at 71 years old, largely forgotten by the Western scientific world. There were no grand funerals. There were no international tributes. There was no posthumous Nobel Prize. The man who saved millions simply disappeared from history. But here's what makes it all even more painful. Today, when you research the cholera vaccine, most medical textbooks credit multiple scientists, rarely mentioning Khavkin as the original pioneer. His name was anglicized, fragmented, diluted, and finally erased. Medical history remembers Pasteur, Koch, Fleming. But very few remember the young Jewish doctor who injected poison into himself and changed the world. And the cruelest part? The vaccine that Khavkin created is still used today. Modern versions of his original formulation save thousands of lives every year in areas where cholera is still endemic. Every life saved is a testament to his genius. But his name is rarely mentioned. This is the story they didn't tell you in school. The story of how prejudice, nationalism, and greed can steal even the greatest human achievements. Waldemar Khavkin didn't just cure a disease. He revolutionized the concept of preventive vaccination. He proved that we can train our bodies to fight invisible enemies before they even attack. He paved the way for all modern vaccines we use today. But he paid the ultimate price for being Jewish, for being Russian, for being different. And here is the devastating lesson of this story: it's not enough to do the impossible. It's not enough to save millions. It's not enough to risk everything, including your own life. If you don't belong to the right club, if you don't have the right surname, if you don't come from the right country, history can simply erase you. Your discovery will be stolen. Your name will be forgotten. And others will receive the glory that should be yours. But perhaps there is a small redemption in this tragedy. Because now you know the truth. Now you know the name Waldemar Khavkin. And maybe, just maybe, by sharing this story, we can give him a bit of the justice he was denied in life. Every time you or someone you love receives a vaccine and doesn't get sick, remember the man courageous enough to inject poison into himself so others could live. Remember that behind every medical miracle exists a human being who risked everything. And remember that history is written by those who have power, not necessarily by those who deserve to be remembered. Waldemar Khavkin died forgotten. But his discovery continues saving lives a century later. And perhaps that is the greatest revenge against those who tried to erase him. You can steal the credit. You can steal the fame. You can even steal a man's name. But you cannot steal the eternal impact of an idea that changed the world. And that's why, even though stolen and forgotten, Waldemar Khavkin won in the end.